Welcome. I'm Curtis, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to sit here with you today. This kind of beautiful, quiet morning as we enter the fall season. So yesterday was the autumn equinox, one of the only 2 days during the year when we experience balance between the hours of day and night. 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. And 2 days ago, we entered the celestial influence of Libra, symbolized by the balance scales. So, the stage has been set in the heavens and here on the ground for us to consider the virtue of divine balance, which is equanimity, the virtue of equanimity. And that's our topic for today. I confess that I had to practice pronouncing that word. I don't use it very often. And I'll further confess that of the 12 virtues that we follow on a monthly basis here at Sunburst, equanimity is probably the one that I have considered the least. So, as I dug into this virtue, I was excited to see that, in fact, it is the central teaching of all the world religions and the world philosophies. The word itself comes from two Latin words, equus, meaning even or level, and animus, meaning mind or spirit. Probably why Paramahansa Yogananda, who was the teacher of Sunburst founder Norm Paulson, used the word even-mindedness to describe equanimity. In Hindu scripture, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that, quote, mental evenness is what is meant by yoga. And then Patanjali, in the Yoga Sutras, discussed the importance of, quote, not reacting emotionally. The core teaching of Taoism is balance. In Buddhism, equanimity is one of the 4 immeasurables, which includes kind-heartedness, compassion, and open-hearted joy. It is Buddha's middle way. Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, they all discuss the importance of the golden mean, which is the midpoint between extremes. And in Christian theology, equanimity is one of the cardinal virtues. So, as I was pondering the virtue, I went to visit my son and his family in Washington, and at one point, my son and I were considering the challenge of trying to describe spiritual energy. And we were reminded of one of the stories of Jesus where he asked the woman at the well to help him get a drink. And as they talked, he told the woman that if she had asked him for a drink, he would have been able to give her living water, using that phrase to describe the spirit of the Creator. Then the phrase living water reminded me of a book that I hadn't thought of in a long time. And that book is titled The Hidden Messages in Water. It was written by Dr. Masaru Emoto and was published in 2001. So a day later, we drove out to Mount Rainier to do a little light hiking and explore the beautiful park up there. And we were staying in a rented cabin. And as we got into the cabin, I looked on the bookshelf, and there it was, The Hidden Messages of Water. I hadn't seen the book in decades. So I was really excited, and I spent the time that I had up there going back and reading through the book. And I was reminded that Dr. Emoto found that water actually responded to vibrations, be it music, words not just spoken, but even words that were written. And he was able to document the response of water to these stimuli by photographing the ice crystals that formed when a drop of water was frozen. And the book has pictures of all these different crystals and showing the different shapes they took depending on the stimuli they were exposed to. The most beautiful crystal that he found was from water that was exposed to the words love and gratitude. And the picture was this beautiful hexagonal symmetrical crystal with 6 points. And if we were to draw lines connecting those points, we would end up with the symbol that we have here in our windows at the sanctuary of the interlocking triangles, the dual forces of Christ. As I read further, there was an experiment recorded in the book that was done by some colleagues of Dr. Emoto. And what they did was they took some rice and they soaked it in water and put it into 3 separate containers. And then for a month, every day, they spoke the words, "Thank you," to one jar. And they spoke the words, "You fool," to another jar. And the third jar, they just ignored. The rice water that heard "thank you" fermented nicely, giving off this malty, nice fragrance. The rice water that heard "you fool" caused the rice to rot in the container fairly quickly and turn black. But the rice water that was ignored, the rice in that container rotted even faster than the one exposed to a negative influence. And so this really baffled me, because I felt that the words of anger would certainly have produced a worse result. But that wasn't the case of this experiment that they duplicated a number of times. So anyway, I'm on vacation. We went about our business, hiking around Mount Rainier, enjoying it. It was beautiful. And then I came home, and I was still unsure about what I'd read about the rice and the water that was ignored. So I continued my exploration of equanimity, and imagine my surprise when I looked in the Sunburst booklet on the 12 principles of virtue, and I found this quote in the chapter on equanimity. "Never count your faults. Just think whether you love God enough. God doesn't mind your faults. God minds your indifference. Paramahansa Yogananda. So there it was, the answer to the riddle of the rice water that rotted so fast when it was ignored. So indifference is the opposite of true even-mindedness, true centeredness, mental, emotional, and spiritual balance. And as the water crystals revealed, there can be no indifference in love and gratitude. In Yogananda's book titled The Second Coming of Christ, he has this to say about equanimity. All dualities belong to the domain of ignorance, fear of sickness, and a desire for mortal health. Fear of poverty and a desire for opulence. A feeling of inferiority from a lack of knowledge, as well as a desire for great intellect. Of course, if we are stricken with ill health, failure, or ignorance, that doesn't mean we should supinely continue in that state. We should rouse the perfection within to express outwardly as health, prosperity, and wisdom, but without acknowledging the pain of lack or fear of failure. We should know that our struggle for completeness is born of delusion, for we already have all we need within our inner true self. It's only because we mistakenly imagine that we lack these divine endowments. We need only to realize the everlasting fullness of this soul treasure house. We're going to take a period now of quiet for a 15-minute silent meditation. And if you have a meditation practice, please follow that. If you're new to meditation, please find a comfortable seat with a nice erect posture, chin kind of parallel to the floor. And then take a few nice deep breaths and just let the breath itself take you to the quiet place of peace inside. If thoughts intrude, it can be helpful to repeat a simple mantra, a verse of scripture, something as simple as, I am breathing in on the inhale, and I am breathing out on the exhale. It will occupy the busy mind, and the breaths will take you to peace. Before we begin, Yogananda went on. God's awakening touch in meditation is the way to be free from pernicious delusions. Having established our happiness not on the temporal pleasures of life, but in God as perceived in meditation, we stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds. Our joy is both enduring and everlasting. And Nicole is going to ring us into quiet with the bowls. In his book, Sacred Science, Sunburst founder Norm had this to say about equanimity. Through the virtue of equanimity, we learn to live in harmony with the law of cause and effect. By the practice of deep meditation daily, we learn to balance the dual sacred forces within us. Having accomplished this, we are able to choose the right course of action by weighing the options presented to us each moment. From this throne center of divine consciousness, we learn how to look at circumstances around us and apply reason and virtue to our thoughts and actions. When equanimity is in action, we're able to sit upon this center and really consider the options. We're able to choose the correct thoughts and expressions to use in our everyday living. I came across a Zen story about equanimity in the face of adversity. An old story, as retold by Daniel Sharpenberg. There was a poor old farmer. He only had one horse and a teenage son to help him around the farm. One day, the horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "Oh, how terrible! You lost your only horse. What will you do now? This is so awful for you." The old farmer just said, "Maybe. Who knows? It could be good, it could be bad." A few days later, the horse came back with 2 wild horses. The farmer's neighbors came by congratulating him. "This is so wonderful. Now you have 3 horses. Isn't this great?" The old farmer said, "Well, maybe. Who knows? It could be good. It could be bad." A few days after that, the farmer's son was riding one of the horses when he fell and broke his leg. It was one of the wild horses, and it wasn't used to being ridden. The farmer's neighbors came again to console him. "Oh my God, this is terrible. Now your son is hurt, he's in pain, and you have no one to help you in the fields." And the old farmer said, "Maybe. Who knows? It could be good. It could be bad." A few days after that, the army came to town. And every young man in the village was being forced to go to war. It would be incredibly dangerous and unlikely that any would return. But the old farmer's son was spared because he had a broken leg. Couldn't go to war. So what a great story about each one of our journeys through life in this world of duality and the equanimity of the wise old farmer. Now, there's a similar lesson behind our beautiful new garden room in the lodge. So at brunch today, please ask a resident what that story is. All right? So we're going to close now before a few more songs, but I wanted us to to take these words from Norm with us today. Though we are in the storm of life's experiences, let us take the time to sit down within our soul and really weigh and balance our course of action. We can choose between the forces of positive and negative options surrounding us and sail our soul ship of life within the eye of the storm, where the two currents meet. We will continue on course until the storm abates and equanimity reveals the shining brilliance of the inner omniscient sun, Christ consciousness, the only port of refuge.
To